What's up everyone, welcome to today's video, welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So sometime around last week I saw this post by a Twitter account or X account named Zuby_Tech. This person said you need an $1,800 PC to match / slightly exceed PlayStation 5. PC requires 22 gigs or more of RAM, at least 16 gigs of VRAM, graphics card to run Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart at PlayStation 5. The most used GPU on Steam is the GTX 1650, no ray tracing, no DLSS, 1.5 GHz, 1.725 GHz, 4 gigabytes of DDR5. They then go ahead to post high-end machine, metrics, basically at 3080 to be able to get this kind of a frame rate versus the PS5. And then they went ahead and posted also another set of PC specs to be able to get something close to the PS5. Now, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If you know anything about PC metrics, you'll notice that this frame time graph is all over the place, which is in both performance modes, which already tells you that this game has a lot of optimization issues. So, ZubyTech, if you make a claim like this and point out only one video game, I think the burden of proof is on you because you have to go now and check other PS5 games or at least other games in the PlayStation ecosystem and their PC counterparts and see if this is something that happens across the board or if this is something that is relegated to Ratchet and Clank or other games. So you can stop watching the video now, go find your evidence, and let me tell you guys why I'm making this video. This particular tweet showed up and I actually made a video immediately to talk about it, but I decided not to publish that until one of my subscribers replied on one of my videos and said, I'd love to hear you guys talk about how you can spend $500 on a console and $2,000 or more on a gaming PC for marginal performance increases or in some cases, worse performance. I replied and said, bro, I have different platforms from the Switch to the 4090. Don't let these people on Twitter fool you. If it was marginal performance, I wouldn't have bothered, but I will work on a video. So $1.78, shout out to you. You are the inspiration for this video. And I wasn't going to make it because I didn't want to call anybody out, but I'm certain that possibly this tweet or maybe tweets like these, because I've been seeing some others online talking this, probably has, in a sense, pointed out this particular issue. And if you didn't know any better, or maybe you're not into the PC gaming space, you would probably see something like that on a surface level and believe it. But just now I just showed you that even in these pictures, this frame time graph here and this frame time graph here is already an indication of issues with the way the game is actually optimized. Frame time graphs usually look somewhat buttery smooth, but when you see one that's actually jittering all over the place, you know that there's work that needs to be done when it comes to that game. That's just one part of the conversation. But let's continue to move ahead on this conversation and see what other PC ports have been able to bring to the table. Let's look at Digital Foundry's conclusion on their Spider-Man Remastered port for PC. I went ahead and left some timestamps. I'm going to go ahead and play this so that you can hear what was concluded when they finished doing their review.
Now, beyond that negative note, I want to positively say, though, that Spider-Man overall on PC is good. It scales really high in meaningful ways above the console version. It offers a great user experience in terms of features and menus, and for my money, I think it has the best RT graphical options we've seen in a AAA game. You have a lot of settings to customize RT, and I think almost every game should do that. But that is enough from me for now. If you did enjoy this video, hit that.
So, you guys heard for yourself, the Spider-Man port, according to Digital Foundry, having done multiple, in my opinion anyways, test parameters in regarding, the way the port is put together compared to the PS5, it is actually a much more superior port. This is because Nix has put in a lot of work on this port, and I'm certain Insomniac already optimized this game to the core, thereby making it run very well. And even with the machine that they used in this particular video, basically using, a very interesting build setup, they're about to show a silly ad. I'm quite surprised how well that game was received and how well its port was actually done. Now, moving on to another PlayStation game. Now, granted, this was not a PS5 game. This game was ported from the PS4 time frame into the PC side of things. And we see Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, Digital Foundry has made multiple videos of this particular game's PC port. The very first video has the title, Horizon Zero Dawn PC, an amazing game gets a disappointing port. Then just a little bit later, about a year later, or from that time that they made that video, they said Horizon Zero Dawn PC revisited. It's so much better, but is it fully fixed? So already from that 1 year mark, the developers had already made significant changes to be able to allow for the game to run better. Notice the hardware barely changed or didn't even change at all, because you'd want to run the same test on the hardware used in the previous benchmarks and the new benchmark, and the game already was performing better. Even though they concluded in their video, I could play their conclusion just like I did with the Spider-Man. I think I timestamped it to 14:55, but it's kind of longer, and I don't want to take the time in this video. You can go look for the video yourself, and you're going to see my comment here on their video that says 14:55. You can listen to the conclusion. They go ahead to say that even though they've improved on the port, it seemed like there were still some things that were holding the performance of the PC version back. But they also considered and understood and said, these games were probably exclusively designed for the PlayStation 4 machine without any kind of, conversation that it was going to come to PC. And the engine was actually one engine that was not really done for PC. They even went ahead to conclude that if you were to go ahead and look at, say, even other PlayStation games like Days Gone, which was actually developed on the Unreal Engine 4, which is a very PC-friendly engine, you'll notice that a game like this actually performed better for its PC port. So this conversation from Zubitech saying this, that you need an $1,800 PC to match or slightly exceed the PlayStation 5, is a whole bunch of hogwash. But these people make these claims. They, in a sense, plant, I would say, to unassuming people or people who may not necessarily be well dialed into the conversation and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, Abolish. I'm just saying you don't care. Like, you're not sitting out here nerding out with us PC folk. So I don't expect you to actually just know all this stuff, because for some of us, it took a while for us to be able to comprehend this stuff. Now, let's move on to another PlayStation game, which is God of War, the PC review as well, where he pretty much concludes something about the game. So I'll go ahead and play it if I don't get an ad here.
Viking escalator. So that is it in the end. God of War on PC is in general a spectacular version of the game, offering meaningful graphical options that scale wonderfully above the PlayStation version of this game. Performance on the GPU is generally very, very good, but CPU performance is a bit rough at times when loading new areas. That is something I would really love to see improved in patches, but that is enough for me for now.
Okay, another conclusion saying that another PlayStation game is actually a superior version, better than the PlayStation 5 version. So that is 2 out of 3 that we see is good. So it seems to me that the port and the work put into the port gives the results, and the results are varying. I'm not saying anything about Gorilla or Santa Monica or Nixxes or whomever ported, Nixxes basically ported Spider-Man and they ported Ratchet and Clank. So you're even seeing in between their own games, there's some discrepancy in performance based on the version that they've actually brought out. So again, if you're seeing superior versions of these games on PC in some cases, and you're seeing inferior versions, I'm sure that should tell you, Abolish, that there seems to be a variation in every different video game. This is something that you're a sub here. When I was talking about Gotham Knights in October of last year and people were insulting me left and right, I told them, I said, every video game is developed differently. Even 2 single-player games can give you 2 varying results depending on how it's been developed and depending on a lot of things. Now, in the case of Horizon Zero Dawn, I would defend that game because its open world structure is actually very different from the Spider-Man open world structure and the God of War linear structure. The God of War linear structure can let you see open world areas, but you are not going there. In Horizon, if you can make your way there, you can make your way there. So the way both games actually will be executed and performed, you are definitely going to see all kinds of variation. To the final part of this video that I want to talk about, and that is, PC players basically building $2,000 or more PCs. That is actually kind of true, but there is something that you have to take into consideration. When we're going to build PCs, we're usually not watching technical reviews from Digital Foundry. I know it's a little shocking. We're going to stations or YouTube channels like Hardware Unboxed, Linus Tech Tips, Nexus Gamer, I think that's the name of Gamers Nexus. Sorry, I'm sorry, Gamers Nexus. I watch a lot of your videos. I can't believe I can remember your name of your channel, and a lot of other tech review channels that focus on the PC hardware. These channels do analysis even to the point where they actually break down graphics cards and PC components to a metric that's called cost per frame. So when you're comparing things like your GPU, you can see how much you're paying per frame that you're generating in the average frame rates that they do. How do they come up with this number? They'll go ahead and run all kinds of benchmarks. They'll compare the different graphics card. They'll look at the price of the graphics card in the market, and then they'll run an analysis to see how much you're paying per frame on the lowest end and what the difference or the delta is when it comes to other graphics card. Now, they've kind of ceased doing this a lot because it's really weird and wonky. And the reason they stopped is because all kinds of games have different, layers and different types of production. So it's not really a fair assessment, but they were throwing it out there at the time that the GPUs were overpriced. That way, people who actually wanted to throw the money at them kind of knew, okay, I'm buying this and I'm getting this value. They also do metrics about power consumption as well, too. So for those of you who may know or may not know, as you're building your PC, you also want to consider how much power draw you're having, because that PC is going to be running your electrical bill. So you don't want to buy a nice high-end item that would eventually go ahead and cost you much more on the back end. So some people consider that as well when they're looking at their own PC purchases. Another thing too is whenever you're looking at PC metrics, the performance on PC is usually running and scaling things at better quality. So higher resolution without using any dynamic resolution settings or metrics. And what I mean by that is if you say maybe look at a PlayStation game and you look at a PC game, there are all kinds of things that are done to make those PC games run at high resolutions, like checkerboard rendering, dynamic resolution scaling, and so on and so forth. For those who want to hear about, checkerboard rendering, I also saved the timestamp here. I'm going to click it and play it in case I don't get an ad. I got an ad, so I guess, but it was an Armored Core ad, so I can't be mad. I like From Software, and I'm going to play that game. But here's what was talked about in terms of quality in regard to the video game.
Are not from the game feel, but from the game visuals. And the most obvious one that I think anyone should notice are differences in image quality on PC. The PlayStation 4 Pro version, and subsequently being played on the PlayStation 5 through backwards compatibility, uses checkerboard rendering to achieve an output 4K resolution. And to put it simply, that checkerboard rendering leaves the game in many areas with a fuzzy output. For example, if the camera is just sitting still, the camera is actually still constantly moving, which is a challenge for the checkerboard resolve to do properly. So surfaces in the environment, like the texture on the ground here for example, will have an ever-shifting fuzz and edges showing up in them, showing the internal checkerboard resolution often. Particles as well show this off, where even with the camera being still, particle effects will have a static checkerboard pattern in them at all times. Same with foliage, as you can see here.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it for now. Like I said, I've put the timestamps in those videos so that you can go there and watch yourself, and you can see how checkerboard rendering can actually be, in my opinion, something that reduces the quality in terms of visuals when you go ahead and actually compare it to, say, something like PC. And these PCs, even at this time, were not even high-end PCs when they actually did these comparisons, but you can already see that native settings already provided you better quality even when you were playing. So 4K native versus 4K dynamic scaling or 4K checkerboarding is actually different in terms of quality and resolution. On a PC, you're actually getting, levels more performance than, meets the eye. Now, if something like this doesn't really, appeal to you, then sticking with, say, a console is fine. But if you really want to see your water, actually look like water compared to fuzz water, then yeah, that's something that most PC players actually, in my opinion anyways, they value those things. They want to see that quality. They want to see the game fully, achieve as much as can be achieved with their machines. So this is something that you're also going to go ahead and see. Now, I want to go ahead and deal a final blow to this particular argument. And when you want to deal a blow to an argument, you don't say it, but I want to go ahead and actually say it, because this argument is so terrible that we have to actually put a nail in this coffin. Now, those of you who looked at this particular PC specs, pay very close attention. Ryzen 7 5800X 3D RTX 3080 for the high-end gaming machine. Look at this one as well. And let's go ahead and look at the capability of this machine itself, if at any rate the PS5 can ever compare to this. Now, some of you know the critically acclaimed Metro Exodus. This was a game that came out a few years ago. This game was actually very interesting in its launch because 4A was actually kind of tying up the Metro series, and they made the game, and the game was actually a lot of fun. It's one of the few FPS games that I've played. A few years ago, I don't know how long it is, maybe a few months ago, they went ahead and gave out their Exodus SDK. Basically, their game engine that they used to make Metro Exodus, or a chunk of it. So a software development kit type deal. Now, this particular SDK comes with some features like a scene editor, where you can take a scene from the game, you can mod it to what you want, you can share it, you can do whatever you want. Now, you have to own the game. They also gave you a model editor as well, where you can edit some of the different models that they have. You can play with the textures, you can edit animation tags, and a few things. They gave you a navigation model. Many of you who may or may not know, navigation meshes allow for AI to move all around. This is some fun stuff. I learned this in Unreal Engine 4. It blew my mind. I mean, I'm glad I did learn it because it helps me get a better appreciation for AI design in video games. And I love AI design. That's one thing that I'm very passionate about, combat and AI, how, NPCs interact in a video game. They also give you a particle, type editor as well. And they give you a terrain tool. So you can go ahead and mod the terrain. And then they give you a weather editor and also a camera track editor and a visual script editor. Very, very generous of them to do that. You can go ahead and download it if you own the game on the Epic Games Store. And you also own it on GOG. This is where they first kind of launched it. But on Steam, you now also have access to be able to launch it from Steam if you own the game. So you can go in there and you can play around. Here's the kicker. Zuby, I told you, remove that tech from your Twitter tag. The system requirements to be able to do this is an i7 4770K or equivalent, 8 gigs of RAM, GTX 1070, RTX 2060, or an AMD Vega 56 using DX12. Have about 31 gigs of storage, and you'll be able to go ahead, in addition to your 70 gigs for the game. Your PS5 may be able to try to pull this off, but by the time you get to where you're processing graphics on a different level, you're compiling shaders, you need more CPU memory, your PlayStation 5 is going to be limited in some sense in doing things like this on a higher level. The PlayStation 5 may be able to use the SDK as is, but once you start adding a few more challenges to it, the PS5 is definitely going to reach its max limit. Or even as we speak, it doesn't even run an operating system that can support this. So it's not only going to be, challenging whenever more tasks show up, it's already software limited. So abolish. This is why many of us jump into PC gaming, because it gives us a lot more freedom to be able to do a whole bunch of stuff. And if this is something that doesn't appeal to a lot of people, then that's perfectly fine. I can understand. But you guys know me. I tell everybody come to PC because I understand that PC just provides a little bit more. Now, have I downloaded the SDK for it? I just looked at it. I was like, this is pretty cool. But I was learning Unreal Engine at the time. I didn't want to, divide my, attention. But that knowledge is going to be able to translate over if I ever wanted to jump into that SDK and make some mods in the game and all that stuff. It would be really cool to go ahead and do. So with the console warriors or the warlords on, the Twitters that don't really provide you any value when it comes to information, or like when I replied to, this particular tweet and I just asked one simple question on this tweet. I said, why would you buy a 3080 for $900 when you can get a 6800 XT for far less? This person, this Zubitech, basically blocked all my subsequent posts. I cannot post on this. Oh, I can now. Okay, well, let me see. Send now. Oh, I can post now. I remember at first, they first blocked me from being able to tweet overall because I wanted to go ahead and add more context and more details. You guys know the reason I got Twitter blue is because I got a lot to say about this stuff. And I remember for like 24 hours, I could not reply. I tried on different machines, and I think they probably restricted my capability to do so. And then I went ahead on my profile. Remember where I showed you guys a tweet? And I went ahead and started adding more context. And then I added a screenshot just in case they deleted the tweet so that people knew what was going on. I think that's when they probably went ahead to let me be able to comment. But it doesn't matter. They've already gone ahead to do damage and misinformed a whole bunch of people. Nonetheless, I hope this was helpful. If anybody's asking you, maybe you can show them this video. If you have any other questions, you can ask them in the comment section. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Thanks so much for watching. Peace out.